of the Congress party in
Thank you
Bihar. Till
for
that,
all those details, Anand. Now, moving on, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bassend has announced that the United States is in talks with China about how to de-escalate a trade war that reignited last week after Beijing announced plans to impose export controls on rare earth magnets used in a variety of high-tech products. Scott Bassend has stated that there has been substantial communications over the weekend, while also hinting that US President Donald Trump's meeting with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in South Korea later this month ahead of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum. This, of course, comes after Trump's 100% tariffs threat to China last week after China announced rare earth export conditions. Now, while suggesting that overall US-China relationship is in good shape and Trump's 100% tariff does not have to happen, Bassend insisted Beijing must back off its plan to restrict rare earth magnets. Bassend is also expected to hold talks with his Chinese counterpart, Vice Premier Lai Fong, before the Trump-Xi meeting in South Korea. I have our guest joining us, Ambassador Gauri Shankar Gupta, former diplomat, Dr. Sharad Kohli, senior economist. Coming to you, Gauri, first, what do you make of this?
Ji, for inviting me. I think this is a very fascinating development because my assessment is that the US does not want its trade relations with China to deteriorate further because their industry is getting affected. The electronics industry, the armament industry, and the EV vehicle industry is getting seriously affected. Also, to some extent, the aircraft manufacturing. And as a result, they don't want to disrupt the inflow of rare earth as well as magnets. So that is why the Treasury Secretary of US, I was listening to him yesterday evening, he was making a very reconciliatory statement, and he even confirmed that President Trump will meet Xi in Seoul. Now, that was not the case earlier because President Trump himself had mentioned that there was no point in meeting Xi if there's no, change in the Chinese position on these issues. So I have a feeling that China and US will work out an agreement under which all these relaxations will happen, particularly the export of rare earth materials as well as these magnets, and then the 100% tariff will be withdrawn by Trump administration. That is my assessment. If that does not work out, I think it will be very disruptive for the global trade, and then the repercussions will not only be between the two countries but all over the world, because China then will have to look for external markets because Chinese economy is highly dependent on exports unlike India's, and if that happens, then China's economy will have serious issues as well as the dumping process by China in different countries will begin. So that will disrupt the entire world trade system as a whole. The another issue here is about the shipping industry. The Chinese have also imposed some tariff on the US ships coming to the Chinese ports. I think that issue is also very serious because that involves heavy tariff and that adds to the cost of exports and imports. So that issue also needs to be resolved. And I have a feeling that in the next 2-3 days, these issues will be threshed out.
I also have Dr. Sharad Kohli, senior economist, joining me. Dr. Sharad Kohli, there were some tariffs that were imposed on the shipping as well, as Ambassador Gupta was telling us. What do you make of this whole situation right now?
Good morning, Vaishali, to you, Ambassador Gupta, and NewsX viewers. I think White House tends to speak first and think later sometimes, and I've observed that a number of times, because first they give a threat, and then they have to backtrack when they realize the repercussions of these threats. Well, I think US should remember that the bilateral trade between China and the US is about $688 billion, services included. And there's a lot of important stuff. In fact, I've been around US, and if you go to any departmental store in the US, you will find off the shelf, especially when we're talking of consumer goods, you will find at least 70% of them, they originate from China. I mean, from anything to everything, from plastics to toys to electronics, just about everything. So textiles. I mean, what I fail to understand is that when President Donald Trump, gives these threats, I think he should be more careful before giving such threat, because to backtrack and then realize later that what will be the repercussion doesn't send a very good message. In fact, it puts the other party in a more strong position, because China, we all know, controls 60%, Vaishali, of the total rare earth minerals. 60%, that's a huge amount. And this is not all. 92% of the processing of the rare earth minerals across the world is controlled by China. At one point of time in history, US used to control rare earth minerals, but then because processing is such a poisonous and environmentally hazardous process, that I think countries gave away, and China grabbed that market long time ago. And now it is holding the world by its tail, because it knows that you can't survive. You need it in missiles. You need it in so many things. It is absolutely imperative for the world now to have these minerals now, because they are used in so many things. So I think China has got the key, I would say, and this is the main reason, Vaishali, why Chinese tariffs were kept in abeyance for 90 days. If you remember, when India was slapped with 50% tariffs, China's tariffs were kept in abeyance because President Trump knew that they cannot do without Chinese imports. There's no backup, there's no fallback plan. I think so. That's where America is stuck, and this is where the statement from the Treasury Secretary came, that we will sort out with China. But the thing is, China should also be ready, because China is also deeply hurt by these constant tariff announcements being made on China. China is not very happy about it. So we need, I appreciate the optimism being expressed by Ambassador Gupta here, but China will also now hold certain cards close to its chest. How far does it want to compromise? Because they are getting used to these threats, and they are very, very damaging, I would say, as far as bilateral relationship is concerned. So I think a very interesting fold of events is going to happen in the days to come, Vaishali. I am not very optimistic, neither I am very pessimistic. I would like to keep my options open, because this whole trade war ravished by President Trump across the world is going to hurt America more than anybody else. Inflation is shooting up. People are losing jobs. No new investments are coming. Small businesses are closing down. US dollar is collapsing vis-a-vis other currencies. We see gold and silver prices. That's one of the reasons why gold and silver prices are shooting through the roof. So I think President Trump needs to appreciate the principles of economics and sometimes principles of diplomacy as well, Vaishali.
Mr. Kohli, you've made an incredibly interesting point, and I want to bring Ambassador Gupta into the discussion and ask him. Mr. Kohli's obviously said that, making a decision and then backtracking, Mr. Gupta, these things obviously lead to bad blood between the two countries. What do you have to say?
Yes, Vaishali, this is absolutely correct. This is not only in this case. He did so in so many other cases. He holds out a threat, and he feels that the other side will crumble under the threat. But that did not happen in many cases, as is the case with China. And China, as you know, is basically an authoritarian state where they can hold on to things despite, internal losses to the industry. So in this case, US is facing a real big challenge because their own industry is under threat now. The electronics industry, the entire semiconductor industry, their aircraft manufacturing industry, their EV manufacturing industry, and to a great extent, other industries as well, they use some of these rare earth minerals in one way or the other. So that is a big threat. Secondly, as Dr. Sharad Kohli mentioned, their own, industry is facing a crisis now. A lot of people have told me, because I have some contacts in US, and they told me that the industry is absolutely uncertain. They don't know what to do, and whether they could manufacture, their next product or not, whether they should outsource the product somewhere else, All those permutation combinations are really troubling them. They are not mentioning it openly so far, but I'm sure they are reaching the White House and telling him that this uncertainty must go. Otherwise, their own industry will suffer tremendously. Okay, so far as the consumer goods are concerned, if the prices go up, obviously the consumers will suffer, but it will not hurt their industry very much. But industrial goods will suffer tremendously. Defense industry will suffer, aircraft industry will suffer, the manufacturings will suffer, and a large number of electronic items will suffer. So I have a feeling that the US will take initiative. They will give some additional concessions to China, and they will try to work out a deal in Seoul. That is my assessment, because US cannot, live with this uncertainty for very long. They have already succumbed to some extent to India, to Europe, to South Korea, to Japan. So they will also succumb to China to some extent. But Chinese also have a vulnerability here. The vulnerability of China is because of a high dependence on their exports. Because if their export industry remains idle for a few months, that would mean a lot of job losses and lot of stocks will accumulate in China. So I think both sides are vulnerable, but China, because of their authoritarian system, they can live with some crisis for a while, but US will have far more difficult situation. So I feel that they will work out a deal. In my view, I think the deal is on the offing, because the statement by Treasury Secretary yesterday was quite conciliatory compared to what he said about India, a few weeks ago. So I am quite hopeful that things will sort out. If they don't sort out, I think we should hope for a global trade war and uncertainty all around, and that will mean that the economic, growth in the world will be affected, the financial institutions will be affected, and the manufacturing, of course, will be affected. Over to you, Vaishali.
I'd like to bring Dr. Sharad Kohli back. And Dr. Kohli, and I want to ask you that, of course, Bassend is expected to hold talks with his Chinese counterparts soon. How do you see the entire situation unfolding? What do you foresee in the future?
Well, I think I'm particularly worried about President Trump's stance, and I'm more worried about how China is going to take, because China doesn't backtrack. Once China makes a point, it hangs on to it, it sticks to it. So I'm not sure, as I said, how much China will like to probably come back, and say, okay, it's okay, let bygones be bygones, let's just forget what you said and let's move ahead, and so and so. Another interesting point which I wanted to add to before I forget, Vaishali, is that if you observe President Trump speaking at the Egyptian summit yesterday, this is with regard to India. I'm sorry, I'm slightly digressing from the Chinese tariffs to the Indian part, because we are, after all, a little more concerned about India. Every time he's called India a friend, every time he's appreciated Prime Minister Modi, you would observe one consistency. He's come up and slapped something on India. It happened first, he slapped 25% tariff. Then he appreciated India, he slapped another 25%. He again appreciated Prime Minister Modi and India. He put sanctions on Chabahar port. He again, on a platform, appreciated India as a great country. India is a great friend. Prime Minister Modi is doing great work for India. He put H-1B visa fee. Now I am worried. This statement which came yesterday during the Egyptian summit, with the Pakistani Prime Minister standing behind him, he once again said, India is a great country and I have a very, very close friend, Prime Minister Modi, who's doing a fantastic job in India, and so on and so forth. I'm now worried, what is the next announcement which is going to come? Because he's again said that India is a friend, and when he had the Pakistani Premier standing behind him, he said, I love Pakistan. He say he's doing business with Pakistan. His family has got crypto businesses in Pakistan. The company is called World Liberty Finance. So I am worried, this closeness to Pakistan as far as America is concerned, where America does not appreciate being a victim of terror of 9/11, where Osama bin Laden was picked up from Pakistan. And with the same country, he's handshaking, he's calling them to the White House, having biryanis in White House and so and so. I really don't think, there is a proper jurisprudence, shall I say, in deciding as to what is wrong, what is right, what is judicially and rationally correct, what is judicially, rationally incorrect. I think he's completely missing out on that point. And that's my concern, Vaishali. As far as China is concerned, as I said, I'm keeping my fingers open for the simple reason, my options open as well, fingers crossed, I'm sorry, for the simple reason that we are not sure how the Chinese government, led by President Xi Jinping, the Communist Party of China, CCP as it is called, how it is going to react. Because I think the Chinese government, I have a feeling, is getting a bit fed up of these constant threats on part of America, when America knows very well that it cannot do without Chinese products. Go and ask the people in America. They will tell you the same story, that if they walk into a store without Chinese products, they would not be able to afford. The cost of living also in America, Vaishali, has significantly risen. And the Chinese products, they come at a very, very reasonable price. So if he's going to substitute those products with another countries, for that matter, how's he going to manage inflation in America? So I think it's a very difficult situation, and I'm very keenly observing as to how do the Chinese counterparts react to Scott Bassend's statement, Vaishali.
This has been a very interesting discussion, Dr. Kohli and Ambassador Gupta. I want to thank you both for joining me on NewsX today. Thank you.